Hey, Ben Krause here. It is Friday, and we are going to have a live stream whether the interwebs like it or not. And so I'm running into a couple issues here with the signal, but hopefully it does not deter the most persistent veterans from at least tuning in and checking out what we have to say today about the... Hang on a second, I got to tell everyone I'm live. Blah, 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 I'm live. We are live in the VR&E group. Yay. All right, very good. And so everyone should be tuning in here in a second. So today what we're going to be talking about deals with the infamous 12-year rule. And so we're going to talk about that. A lot of veterans get denied, sometimes wrongly, when it comes to the 12-year rule. And I want to make sure that as we move forward in this dialogue that we've been having about veteran readiness and employment and what veterans are experiencing, I want to make sure that we are able to give you the types of answers that you need and deserve, that you are otherwise probably not getting from your vocational rehabilitation counselors. So having said that, if you have any questions and you're like, hey, this dude on the screen here is a VA accredited attorney, he might know something about VR&E. I'm going to ask him. You should do that. Ask in the comments below. If you are in our Facebook group or in Facebook generally or something like that, I should be able to hopefully see your comment here. Sometimes I can see your name, sometimes I can't. So if I don't name you, I am sorry. That just means I can't see who you are, but I see that you're here, So I see your question. And otherwise, I can see the comments from YouTube and Facebook only. I cannot see them in real time from LinkedIn, unfortunately. So if you're in LinkedIn and you're watching this, feel free to ask a question. I will go double check the stream and static feedback on microphone. How much static feedback? Is it a lot or a little? Because it shouldn't be... let's see here. A lot or a little? Is it changing? How much feedback do we have? Because it looks well, anyway, so somebody let me know. If you can't hear me, then let me know. A lot of static. Oh, shucks. All right, hang on a second. I must have done something wrong. Here we go. Okay, give me a second. Understandable, but it's noticeable. Okay, thank you for that. Let me try to figure out how to switch this around. So we will do the mic. Okay, I'm going to switch. Can everyone hear me now? It's a different microphone. Is it still staticky or is it okay? Hello, hello. This is microphone number 2. So we'll see if that works. Can everyone hear me? Much better. Okay, so a lot better. A lot I can hear. Okay, great. So, stupid thing. Here I thought I was going to be fancy and use my system the way that I wanted to, but I can't. So that's okay. Hang on a second. I got to get the thing in focus. So anyway, all right. So at least you guys can hear me, so that's better. I'll just talk a lot louder. So that's okay. So basically what we're going to be talking about today deals with the veteran readiness and employment. Hey, Bamboo, good to see you. It looked cool. It looks cool, right? Geez, it's only a $400 microphone. Looks great. It doesn't work, all the time anyway. So that's fun. I must have knocked something when I moved it. So I'll have to check that later because the sound is a lot better when it works right, but when it doesn't work right, that's horrible. Hey, David, good to see you, bud. So, so let's talk about this whole 12-year rule thing. So there's not a lot to it. I know I got a Yeti microphone too. So there's not a lot to it as far as what the issue is and how to get around it. So generally, for veterans that are pre the 2013 cutoff, after 2013, there, as I understand it, we're not going to be running into this issue anymore because, or it'll be different anyway. This 12-year limit, at least as it relates to getting your GI Bill. I'm gonna have to double check on that. But as far as older veterans, you're going to run into this 12-year limit. And so what does that mean more or less? And so I'm not going to give you like a specific legal definition, but I'll explain to you like I would explain it to somebody in an elevator, well, not that would ever happen, but, let's say I'm in an elevator and somebody wants to know about veteran readiness and employment for whatever crazy reason. And so, the general gist of it is you would need a serious employment handicap finding during the initial evaluation in order to get approved to get around the 12-year limit. There's some hang-ups on this because a lot of vocational counselors will provide what I believe are inadequate initial evaluation assessments, resulting in a veteran not being found to have a serious employment handicap, therefore not entitled to VR&E benefits at the 12-year rule. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, how to get around it, how to better prepare yourself for that initial evaluation, things like that. But generally, veterans get these denials and they just assume that it's correct, and they move along. Hey, Andreas, and they move along. Good to see you. They go to, they get it, and then they move along, and unfortunately, they don't push back, and it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how it works. And they think, like, you look at the black and white on the document, and you read, well, you're at 12 years, blah blah blah. You're not entitled. And a lot of veterans just believe that the VRC is telling them the truth, and so they go away. They don't think to push back. And the reality is that you really need to look at it more closely, because a lot of veterans can and really should have been found approved for those VR&E benefits, but they just weren't. And at the end of the day, it all boils down to the difference between an employment handicap and a serious employment handicap. So I'm going to talk about that difference here because really at the core of it, this is really what matters. If you're a veteran that's 40, and I think there was somebody here, David, who's 70 plus, and he's driving a school bus and would like to do something else. The reality is that our country has ill-equipped a lot of individuals for the retirement age, and so a lot of individuals, more probably now than in the past, are going to have to work beyond the glory years of the mid to late 60s just because. And so what that means for veterans that are older or younger, there's a lot of different variables. And what it's going to mean to first have an employment handicap, and then second, to get a serious employment handicap on top of that. So I'm just going to give you a rough overview of what that looks like. If you have any questions that are related to this or not related to this, happy to give feedback. One of the things that we might have time to talk about later is going to deal with whether your disability ratings might get reduced if you use VR&E. There is a lot of good and bad information out there about this, and I want to talk about it here. If we have time, maybe next time if I do it then, because there's just a lot of veterans that don't use VR&E because they're scared of their rating being reduced, when really it's either a non-issue, such as for a lot of veterans that are 100% permanent and total, or even if it is an issue and your rating does go down, the benefit of getting a great job following great training should far outweigh the reduction of, basically, going from 100% down to 90%. But we'll talk about what that means and why that can happen if we have time. But for the most part, we're going to talk today about the 12-year rule, work I've done to help veterans get around that through the appellate process, and what we've done to try to make that work out, so on and so forth. And so basically, when you're going in for your initial evaluation, This is your first appointment with the VRC. Most veterans have no idea they're going in for a forensic exam. They think they're going there to chat with their buddy counselor because vocational rehabilitation counselor is the name. And so they see of the employee you're going to be talking to. And so they see counselor as part of their title and they think this person's their buddy. So they go in rather ill prepared. They're not ready to talk about how maybe their disabilities affect them. But instead, they're going in wanting to talk about how they're going to be a kick butt employee or whatever once they get this training, and probably oversell their abilities without really understanding the nuance of a vocational impairment and how to highlight, what is really going on so that the counselor takes better appreciation of and is better at providing a counseling narrative report, basically. Because that's the goal of that first meeting. And so anyway, point is that when you are, hang on a second, I think I'm getting signal that the sound is a little bit too loud, so I'm going to turn it down just a smidge. So anyway, when you go in for this forensic exam, that basically means that the person is going in and they are going to be, the person you're talking to is going to be taking down information that you provide verbally and turning it into a legal document that they then rely on to adjudicate your case for entitlement, okay? So just broadly, what they're looking for is information on the 1902W. Very important if you're watching this, and I'm going to say it twice. It is very important that you fill that out correctly, okay? The 1902W VR&E questionnaire that you receive before your first appointment must be filled out correctly. So make sure you put everything on that document or you attach something to it if you run out of room that explains exactly how your disabilities affect you when it comes to work or when it comes to trying to find work or when it comes to your ideas about whether or not you can work, okay? You got to focus on your vocational rehabilitation questionnaire, fill it out correctly, has to be addressing your disabilities that are service connected, assuming that this is true, right? And explaining it in great detail, as much detail as you can think of. Don't be too long, like don't go in with a book. But take your time to fill out the form correctly with everything that is accurate, okay? A lot of veterans blow that off because they think, oh, this is some dumb crap. They're not going to look at it anyway. Yeah, I've seen a lot of veterans get denied because they don't fill out the form correctly. And then we got to fix it later. And then you got to hire an attorney. Okay? So fill it out correctly. Spend time doing that. Okay? It's not that long. And it's all about you. And this is all about you winning benefits that could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in tuition, much less a brand new career down the road. Okay? So take the time to fill it out correctly. And make sure that you do that. I see somebody here commenting, oops, I messed up that form. Okay. Yeah, it can happen. So anyway, point is fill it out. If you run out of space because the form doesn't have a lot of space and there's no instructions at all for the form, at least inadequate at best, if you run out of space, use a Word document attachment and just attach it and then send it in. But you want to make sure that you provide a solid narrative. Very important, okay? Could not be less important, okay? It's important, okay? This is the first thing, your first impression with a counselor. Hopefully they read it, not always, but hopefully they do. And then when you show up for your meeting, that is then a forensic exam. And they are taking information for you or from you to create a counseling record narrative report, okay? This is on a VA form 28-1902B. You won't see it. They won't give it to you. It's in your file, but you won't see this, okay? So it's really important that you articulate everything that is affecting you as best you can. Focus on your disabilities that are service-connected in this meeting, okay? And how they affect your ability to gain and maintain suitable employment. That's key. Suitable employment. I'm not talking about employment at Walmart. I'm not talking about employment driving a forklift. I'm not talking about helping your buddy do, split firewood or something like that. It's not what I mean. What I'm talking about here is good question. How many times can you use voc rehab? I'll get into that in a bit, but the answer is there is sometimes a limit, kind of, but technically there is no limit if you meet the criteria. Hopefully, of course, you don't need to keep using it over and over again because they did it right the first time, okay? So hopefully you don't have to keep using it. But if you do, like I had to use it twice. A lot of my clients have had to use it twice, okay? If you get into the 3 and 4 times situation where you go back for like a 4th degree, you know, I mean, that's a little tricky. But okay. So Bamboo asks a question about power of attorney. So I have worked on cases with other attorneys where other law firms have worked on the disability claims side, and I work on the VR&E side. So that can be done. You will likely never be able to have a VSO work with an attorney at any point in time because usually VSOs don't want to do that. They usually want the glory, I guess, for themselves, or I don't know why. But a VSO won't usually do that. You can usually use 2 law firms on different benefits types, but usually not. You wouldn't be able to have like 2 law firms working on compensation. That's usually not going to work out. But you know, other things you can. So anyway, excuse me. So the point is, going back to what we're talking about, 1902B questionnaire, fill it out. Very important. Okay, so fill that out. It's very important to fill it out right, thorough. Do not blow it off. Don't wait until right before the meeting to do it. You get that thing right in your inbox and you fill it out and you send it back. You fill it out, send it back. Okay, it's super important. Do not blow that off. Next, you go in for your eval. Focus on your disabilities and how they affect your ability to gain and maintain suitable employment, or even in some instances to qualify for suitable employment, which may be a factor. So what that basically means, when you're going in, they're going to have to assess you for a vocational impairment. They're going to have to then assess whether or not your service-connected disabilities substantially contribute to that impairment. And then this is the third thing, they're going to have to evaluate whether you have overcome the effects of that impairment by either qualifying for suitable employment or gaining and maintaining suitable employment. However, the caveat there is you cannot be qualified for suitable employment and also be unemployed for reasons beyond your control. Did I say that right? So yeah, so what they're looking for is essentially, if you're unemployed, then on paper you might look like you're qualified, but the proof is in the pudding. If you apply to a bunch of jobs and you can't get those jobs, you're just not qualified. You don't meet that criteria. Okay, so therefore you will be found to have an employment handicap. So you'll need to prove, you know, if that is you, and I'm talking to you now, you're going to have to go in with denial letters from potential employers, things like that, to demonstrate that you cannot gain and maintain suitable employment and that you're not qualified for suitable employment because your employment is not within your own control. Therefore, you can't be qualified for suitable employment because the proof shows that you're not getting employment. Okay, so food for thought. Very important, though, to evaluate. And so having said that, I just wonder what was going on with my stupid, so disappointed that my microphone is not working. I like the sound out of that thing so much better, but oh well, it's all right. Maybe I'll use a boom mic. So anyway, point is that let's see here. So yeah, VR&E helps find work. They're not good at it, so don't count on VR&E to get you a magic job. Sometimes they might, but for the most part, that's one of the areas that VR&E has been pretty bad, is helping veterans get work. So don't hold your breath that they'll give you some kind of magical help. It's just not how it goes. So anyway, so suitable employment. That is employment that is consistent with your aptitudes, abilities, and interests. It doesn't aggravate or unacceptably aggravate your disabilities. You know, you could be a person where basically any kind of thing would aggravate your disabilities. Well, you know, I mean, you got to do something, right? You can't just sit around. But generally speaking, it's suitable employment is employment that is consistent with your aptitudes, abilities, and interests, that doesn't aggravate your disabilities. If it is of a type that might aggravate your disabilities, well, then you'll need to get a medical opinion from a physician or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist to opine about whether or not you can get appropriate accommodations in that context to do the job anyway. And there are lots of examples like that. I've had to work on cases where we've had to demonstrate that type of evidence to be able to get approved for something that otherwise was going to be denied. So it can be done. It's just, it's not easy. So that's why some of these cases require an attorney to help out with respect to the argument and evidence gathering process and evidence development process, in talking with experts. So anyway, having said all of that, so basically the next step then, if you have an employment handicap, in order to get around the 12-year rule, is to then have a serious employment handicap. A serious employment handicap is essentially the core definition comes down to whether your vocational impairment is significant. And I guess arguably the difference between significant and vocational impairment and the other type of vocational impairment, at least in theory, could just be insignificant, and so in other words, not necessarily perceptible of measurement or something like that. Most veterans that go into VR&E, about 70%, have a significant vocational impairment and are found to have a serious employment handicap. Although of that group, VRE still tries to, in many instances, avoid paying for or developing evidence to support higher level training for advanced degrees and things like that, despite a veteran having a serious employment handicap. It happens frequently. It's something I see a lot. So if you have a serious employment handicap, but your counselor is pushing back on whether you can become a doctor or lawyer or other business executive, kind of thing, they may be pulling your chain a bit, so you might need to push back, right? So make sure that, and by push back, I mean, don't take no for an answer and make them put it in writing. Put it in writing. I'm going to say it one more time. Put it in writing. You're not denied until they put it in writing. Otherwise, they're just trying to blow you off. So I do see very frequently veterans come to me, they think they've been denied, and I guess in a sense you have been because it was verbal. They just refuse to put it in writing. And so the second you force them to put it in writing, by demanding it, you have to put that part in writing. You have to demand it yourself if they don't do it, and say that you demand a copy of a written notice of the decision per 38 CFR 21.420, okay, 21.420, and that talks about what information they're supposed to put into a decision letter for proper notice. And you need that to appeal, right? Your appellate rights don't really start until you get that written letter. So it's super important. You got to get that. But anyway, so going back to the point of this particular thing, we're going to wrap it up. So yes, you can. Veterans can use VR&E even if they got out of the military more than 12 years ago. I've helped quite a few veterans get around that. But in order to get around that, you need to demonstrate that you have an employment handicap and a serious employment handicap. The serious employment handicap simply means that your vocational impairment is significant. Again, the vocational impairment must be significant. That frequently I see vocational counselors believe a higher bar regarding what it means to have a significant vocational impairment than what is called for in the regulations. And they also frequently underdevelop the evidence that they're supposed to develop during the initial evaluation. Okay, so having said all that, that's kind of the gist of it. So yes, you can use it after 12 years. If you get denied, you are welcome to reach out to my law firm. We provide free case evals for veterans who are denied benefits all the time. Most VSOs, but not all, don't understand how vocational rehabilitation or veteran readiness and employment works insofar as appealing that type of a decision. So I'd encourage you to reach out. You can talk to me or my team, and we'll be able to give you feedback. Also, we have this great group addressing VR&E benefits. We're over 40,000 veterans strong. It's the longest, biggest, oldest VR&E group on Facebook. So feel free to reach out. Over 40,000 members, veterans that are giving feedback from their personal experiences to other veterans to keep us all informed about what's happening, right? Because regional office to regional office has different policies, and how they adjudicate cases is frequently different. Again, frequently different. Do I handle only VR&E benefits? No, I do disability comp, CRSC, discharge upgrade type stuff. So pet compensation cases, VR&E. We do handle FTCA cases, so that's med mal basically. We are going to start handling mass tort type cases. So that is helping veterans who are affected by things like the Philips machine that caused a lot of problems and death in veterans and other people. That was inappropriate for CPAP. Handling that type of work, a fair amount of different things. So definitely, so spouse education. I have not had a situation where somebody needed help with spouse education. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't help. I have worked on caregiver cases. So caregiver cases are usually cases where you're, working for the caregiver to help them get access to the support guaranteed by, Congress. So I work on that type of stuff. And we also work on a variety of other issues, policy work, and whatnot. I am also, my other company, Armo Press, which publishes on disabledveterans.org. That's my blog. And, we functioned as a member of news media for many, many years and do FOIAs and other kinds of stuff with respect to the Department of Veterans Affairs mainly, but I think we're going to be branching out to some other agencies soon, like DOD, on some of our investigations addressing policy and whatnot. And I also help out with a nonprofit. So there's a few things that we do. My main work, though, is as an attorney and helping veterans become business leaders. So VR&E is something that's real close to my heart because that's the program that paid for me to become an attorney and paid for my undergrad at Northwestern and law degree at University of Minnesota, and helped fund my law practice, which is a Minnesota-based but national law practice helping veterans with their denied benefits. And so, the question here, okay, so now I'm going to open it up for questions. So I hope that what we talked about helps. Again, if you get denied and you have your denial letter, feel free to reach out to the firm. And if you have questions, it's a free service that we provide to the veteran community. So, we do the case eval. I don't do the representation pro bono, though. So if you want my representation, that's usually a paid service, unless, there are some cases I work on pro bono, but there are certain criteria that you have to meet in order to qualify for that. And for the most part, most people come to me needing help becoming doctors or lawyers or other kinds of executives. And those are generally paid representation after the person's been denied. But aside from that, we help out people nationwide, veterans mainly, and sometimes their family members, address wrongs within the VA and work on a variety of different topics. But if you have a question about CRSC benefits from DOD, or compensation benefits from VA, VR&E benefits, and these are, again, when it comes to the VA, you cannot hire an attorney until you've been denied benefits. Congress has decided that veterans do not have a right to an attorney whenever they want. And so you cannot hire an attorney unless you've been denied benefits. So only after the VA has developed a case against you can you then hire an attorney. I think we're the only group in the United States of America that lost the right to hire an attorney whenever we took off our uniform. And after that point, you no longer had a right to hire an attorney if you believed the VA owed you money. So if you believe the VA owes you money, Congress decided that you should not have a right to an attorney until the VA has an opportunity to build a case against you, which means that many veterans have less rights than criminals or illegal aliens. So there you go. That's my 2 cents there. But let's see here. So we got a few questions. I'm going to roll through these and then get back to work today. So, can your rating decrease if you get a job through VRE? So, your rating can decrease if you get a job anywhere if you have a disability type that is linked to employment. So, like if you have 100% PTSD, is probably the example that comes to mind, where you were found to have 100% complete workplace preclusion because of the effect of your disabilities, meaning you can't find work and keep work because your disability is so bad. And then after using VR&E to get retrained into something that's appropriate, then you gain and maintain suitable employment that is not in a protected work environment, then you could end up with a rating reduction of that type of rating. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have other ratings that increase in severity and then end up with, a regular scheduler again, as far as the rating goes, or even permanent and total. So there's a lot of variables that can go on when it comes to people's ratings. And so, having said that, yeah, the reality is your rating can go down, and it should go down if it's of a type that shows that you can't get work. Down the road, if just if it doesn't work out though, and you're not able to gain and maintain employment, then that's another story. But your rating for that type can go down. That doesn't mean that if you're 100% permanent in total, and your rating has zero to do with employment, direct employment, and there's no evidence showing that your disability is improved, like actual objective evidence, then I think that the odds of a rating reduction being proposed is low. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. That doesn't mean that the proposed rating reduction isn't incorrectly proposed. That happens all the time. So veterans are frequently selected for reduction inappropriately. And so you got to be ready to fight back at all times. It's kind of the unfortunate reality with VR or VA benefits generally. So having said that, yes, your rating can go down for that particular type of rating, whatever it is, if it's affected by or shows improvement when you get employment after completing VR&E. That can happen. The biggest though is like TDIU benefits. That's probably the most prevalent example. So if you're 100% because of a TDIU finding, total disability, individual unemployability, in that context, VR&E does let compensation know where you're at in the program, and they will reevaluate you to see if you no longer justify TDIU benefits, which in my opinion is okay, because in many instances, if you go get training and the training is quality for a job that is appropriate for you, I would rather make $70,000 or $80,000 a year than make the additional $20,000 you might get off of being TDIU for doing nothing. I think that your quality of life will be better, and that you will live longer because you'll be hopefully a little bit more active and more engaged in what's happening. And so I think that that's an okay trade-off. Some veterans won't do it, but I think that it depends on your circumstance. So do ratings stay stable after age 55? I wouldn't rely on that being like a hard and fast rule. There are certain criteria for certain age points and also for the duration you've been found with a particular rating. But does, your rating could still be reduced in theory after 55, depending on a variety of different variables, like such as you get better magically, not to say that it happened. I could also think though of an example, like if you have cancer and suddenly a new cure comes out, you're cured, you're no longer affected by cancer anymore, then I could see the rating going down, in that context, even after being 55. So I hope that helps clear it up a little bit. It's a very complicated thing, so I can't say I can't speak to everything. And again, everything we're talking about here is just educational in nature. This is not intended to be legal advice for anybody watching this now or in the future. But we're just, talking about experiences and what I've seen. to give you perspective in your own case. And again, each case is unique. Every human being is unique, at least to certain degrees. So just, food for thought. All right. Can you help veterans in every state? Yes, I can. I am VA accredited. I have helped veterans in the U.S. and not in the U.S. I am VA accredited, right? So in theory, you're able to represent veterans against the VA related to your VA accreditation or other related federal matters on account of that. I am only licensed to practice law before the tribunals of Minnesota. So when it comes to state matters, I am limited to Minnesota. If I got licensed in a different state, those would be my limitations. However, I am admitted to practice in DC at the district court level, so the federal courts. I'm also admitted to one of the federal courts in Wisconsin. And let's see, the Court of Claims, and I don't know, I may be forgetting something, but anyway, so the federal court, federal issues is going to be different and more nuanced. When it comes to state-specific stuff in a state court, that will be based on the licensure of that state. And I am licensed to practice law by Minnesota, and I can practice law in the Minnesota state courts, but before federal courts or federal agencies, that's a different matter altogether. So just food for thought there. There's some Supreme Court cases on point about this related to a variety of things, including the patent office and dealing with patent adjudications. So anyway, a lot of different variables there. So I hope that helps. Let's see other questions. So in other words, yes, I can represent people in Utah who are in Utah, so long as it's a VA accredited matter or some other kind of federal thing where representation is appropriate. But each situation is different. So so VR&E counselor told me that the only job I can have once I get my degree is criminal justice. Is a probation officer job. So if you are in VR&E now, whoever wrote this, I'm going to put it up on the board. I would encourage you. So first of all, the answer is no. That's not true. A veteran can gain and maintain employment in a different field, even if it's, or in a different occupation, even if it's different than what their plan said, so long as they consent and whatever, so you can be then found rehabilitated in a different career under certain circumstances. But if you want to get into something else, you may want to request a change to your plan if that affects, like training. Okay. Are you qualified? Okay. So the answer to this is yes, generally. But again, so your TDIU, and so the voc rehab counselor is probably going to deny you, claiming that your rating means that it's not feasible for you to complete a vocational goal. However, a lot of veterans probably are qualified for and do use VR&E benefits despite being 100% TDIU, but it depends on your specific evidence and what's going on in your case. So I just want you to be aware. Each case is super unique. And then another veteran writes in, I am in the program. I just graduated from Texas, University of Texas. Is the VR&E going to help me find a job? Yes, and they're supposed to provide you with 2 months worth of subsistence payments. Hopefully you can get a job. I know right now the job market is not looking great. So just have to be cognizant that there are some issues coming that may be a problem. How many times can you use VR&E? You can use it in theory an infinite number of times, but that won't work. There are certain criteria you have to meet. It's within the regulations 38 CFR 21.284. Again, 21.284. You can read through that, and that'll tell you how a person can reuse the program for training. Okay, place of employment. So this is not what I would be doing because I don't necessarily do this type of work unless it's certain unique circumstances, but generally not. So who can we contact? I would contact an employment attorney in your state or an employment attorney who handles that type of stuff. So whoever this is wrote in, oops, I messed up that form. They're referring to the 28-1902W questionnaire. I'm 100% permanent total. Should I poke the bear? I can easily request. So don't request the student loan discharge stuff, unless you really are never going to go back to school again, because you can use it but once, right? And then if you try to go to school later, then you're going to have a hard time getting support while you're working that out. I've seen so many eligible veterans walking away from VR&E. Okay, so for this person anyway, I would say if you think that you qualify and you need the support to gain and maintain suitable employment because of your disabilities, then I would look into it. Absolutely. Another veteran writes in, I've seen so many eligible veterans walk away from VR&E because they were initially denied. You should always fight for your benefits. And I agree with this. I see it a lot. And just, anyway, Andreas writes in, having a great day, Ben. Thank you. Appreciate it. Really appreciate you with that comment. Let's see here. Another veteran writes in, I want driving a school bus. Yes, it makes sense to try to get VR&E in that context. Let's see. Otherwise, yeah, everything else is a staticky microphone. Okay, so I'm going to double check. Let's see. I have a couple last questions. If you get VR&E, I also still have 7 months left on my GI Bill. Yep. However, a 15-year window expires this month. Does that mean VR&E? So if you're in the program and in training, usually your higher level BAH will continue despite that window. So, but each case is different. So I just want to let you know. Is there a deadline to use student loan forgiveness? So the answer here is not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean there won't be or that there is. You can only use it once to waive all your student loans, one time. And that's if you have 100% rating. There are other criteria that you could also get a waiver for. But generally, if you're 100%, 100% TDIU, regular scheduler, P&T, all that stuff, then you can. So, but use it. I mean, when you're never going to go to school again, that's maybe an all right time to use it. But if you're still in school, don't do it, because then you'll have a hard time getting student loans to complete your training. That's at least my feedback as far as that goes. Otherwise, that's about it. I'm going to sign off here, but I really thank everybody for joining us, and I'm going to pray real quick over our group. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus Christ, we thank you so much for this opportunity and for the chance to speak to veterans. Our objective here is to help veterans become leaders in this society, because I believe that we need more veteran leaders and that our country would be better off if we were all equipped to the maximum extent feasible, and magically that's what veteran readiness and employment is supposed to do. However, it frequently does not do that. So we ask, Lord, that you open up the purse strings of the agency so that they become less restrictive, and help these vocational rehabilitation counselors really develop a heart to help veterans and not to misbehave as they sometimes do in some instances. And ask, Lord, that you help all of us reach this certain point to move our country forward, that our country becomes strong for our children and grandchildren, and that you help us to root out the evil that is within so many different ranks of the federal government. Help us to become the leaders that you need us to in our local communities, as elected officials, as lawmakers, as attorneys, as doctors, as professors, as psychologists, and help us to really kick butt. Thank you so much, Lord, for everything that you've done and for everything you've given us today. Amen. All right, y'all. Have a great weekend, and otherwise, I will be in touch. Take care. God bless.